unanimous. Good morning. We'll start the budget meeting for the Blackhawk Board of Supervisors with a roll call.
Schwartz. Schwartz. He said he's here. Brant. Hall.
Here.
Leyland. Here.
All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1, agenda received as proposed or amended.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Second.
There we go. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 2, budget. This is a discussion, consideration of all aspects of the FY '26 Blackhawk County budget. And we'll start first with Kathy. Road Department.
Okay, good morning, Board. I'm Kathy Nicholas, the County Engineer. I'm pleased to present our FY '26 budget to you this morning. We have several of our managers with us this morning. I would like to introduce them. Griffin Kabelka, our roadside biologist. Ryan Brennan, the Assistant County Engineer. Zach McFarland, our shop foreman. Wayne Even, our road superintendent. And then Allison Roby, our fiscal or financial analyst, sitting behind me. I did bring them with me today because we do work really hard on our budget most of the year, throughout the year. As you know, there are some distinct peculiarities with our budget. The Iowa Code, the Iowa DOT takes special interest in the engineer's budget. We have to submit our annual budget to the Iowa DOT along with our 5-year plan by April 15th of every year. So I will be coming to you again in March to talk about our 5-year plan. We also are required to submit our annual report to the Iowa DOT, which is a summation of how we've spent our money for the last year's fiscal year. We have to do that by September 15th of every year. So there's a lot of checks and balances that go along with the engineer's budget or the budget for the road department. So we're going to take a little bit of time explaining some of that this morning because we do have some new supervisors. We have some supervisors, potential supervisors who may be here in the audience or maybe zooming in at a later date. So we are going to try and answer questions if they come up this morning on our budget. The purpose, of course, of the roads department is to deliver the best transportation system, primarily the roads and bridges here in the unincorporated areas of Blackhawk County, to the residents of Blackhawk County and the visitors, drivers who may be traveling through our county. We do this in an responsible way in a financially responsible manner. Of course, our main duties are the engineering side of the house where we put together plans, design our projects, we administer the projects, do the construction and administration of our work, and we develop the 5-year plan. We do spend a lot of money and time on maintenance of our roads and bridges. And then statistics, I won't go into a lot of that. I did share some of that information with you in December when we went through our accomplishments. Plus, I also gave you a copy of our January newsletter, and in the middle of the newsletter, we had all kinds of statistics on work that we had accomplished in the calendar year 2024. Let me just tell you what I'm going to be talking about today. We're going to talk about our revenues, the secondary road fund, the road blocking sales tax, expenses, our revenues in both of those funds, as well as talking to you about our new mechanic shop. So I just thought we'd start out with the definition of what the secondary road fund is. And this county receives funding just like every other state, every other municipality in the country. People purchase gas and that goes into the road use tax funds here in Iowa. When people register their vehicles, when they pay licensing fees, vehicle fees, several other types of miscellaneous fees, that goes into the state's road use tax fund. Then by formula, that road use tax fund is split up and distributed among the counties and the cities. We receive it as funds into our secondary road fund, that's what we call it, is our secondary road fund. This money is constitutionally protected and it's directed to be spent on roads and bridges in Black Hawk County. This does allow us to create a carryover. We are able to establish a fund balance because it is constitutionally protected and it stays in our account. As I said, we know it is our secondary road fund here at the county, and it is Fund 120. If you take a look at historical projections of that road use tax fund to the counties, as I told you, every fall we have to develop, we are working on this budget, we're working on numbers, and the Iowa DOT provides us with a projection of what the road use tax fund will be coming into Black Hawk County. You can see on the graph there that historically those estimates have trended up, which is a good thing. People are continuing to purchase more fuel every year. Licensing fees, taxes, vehicle fees are increasing. So historically you can see that the secondary road fund money or the road use tax funds are increasing in the state of Iowa. Typically, we are averaging $350,000 less than the actual money that projection is about $350,000 less every year than what we actually receive. So at the end of the fiscal year, we can see that we actually receive $350,000 more on average than what was projected by the Iowa DOT. Again, this is what's contributing to our growth in our fund balance. Now let's take a look at our secondary road fund. So this is the county money. What comes into the secondary road fund? And this is, like I said, the DOT money from the road use tax fund. It's also some money that the DOT classifies as time 21 money, which also goes into the road use tax fund. We also receive the general fund basic funding as well as rural fund basic. And you can see from the last 4 years that those balances, those amounts are continuing to grow into the county funds, into our secondary road fund. This year, we are projecting that our overall revenue into the secondary road fund will be $9.452 million. Right now, we are projecting that we have approximately $6 million of unspent money in that secondary road fund. I should say that this money does not include the local option sales tax fund. That will be discussed a little bit later on, and it does not discuss, I will not be discussing our farm to market funding, which is also funding that we receive for roads and bridges, but that does not run through this secondary road fund budget. So I know that's a lot of different types of money that we receive, so we're trying to keep that all straight. And it also does not include any federal money that we receive. We'll talk about those funds when we talk about our 5-year plan in March. Just briefly, I did switch around a few of Michelle's numbers. And so we thank Michelle for providing us with these numbers. Any mistakes on these, my version of these tables are mine alone. But we put all of the revenue together and you can see right here, this is showing the money from the road use tax fund, $4.8 million. You can see some of this other miscellaneous money coming into the secondary road fund. We have 28E agreements with the city of Raymond, for example. We are charging them a fee every year to plow snow. That comes in as a revenue. Here's that time 21 funding I was telling you about. We have miscellaneous state grants. This year we are hoping to get a grant from the IRVM program for the chipper. So we budgeted that as revenue was $15,000. We do a lot of oversized and overweight permits in this county. We are budgeting $70,000 for that item, and that's actually down from last year where we budgeted $150,000. John Deere at this time is not producing as many tractors, so there are not as many tractors being hauled out on the county road system for the next year we're projecting. We also have just some really miscellaneous items such as sale of capital assets that we get off of Gov Deals, for example. So we're including all of that revenue. And here's that revenue again, along with the general basic fund and the rural basic fund, all equaling the $9.4 million. And we do have one item down here, the $44,000 will be coming back to us as a reimbursement from the city of Cedar Falls. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. This is our staff. I wanted to talk to you about salaries. We took this photo last August at a summer event we held with all of the employees. We have approximately 42 employees on our payroll. We have had 42 employees for the past 16 years. We have 41 people, full-time equivalents, and then we share a position with the conservation department, and that is a 60-40%. We pay 60% of our GIS technician salary, and conservation pays 40% of that salary. That's worked out. That's been a really good working relationship we have with conservation, with our GIS position. We also budget for a summer employee, a summer intern at a little under half employee, 0.46. So that does bring us to a total of 42.06 employees. You can see in that line, or in our proposal for FY26, we do budget for some overtime. You know, it's hard to predict how much it's going to snow every year, but we do budget for some overtime. That's primarily where our overtime comes in, is the snow plowing in the winter. And then our civil engineering technicians, they also get some overtime in the summer when our contractors are out building our roads and bridge projects. We need to be out there doing inspection. So that gives us a total salary projection this year of $4.35 million. I just wanted to briefly go over some of our operating expenses with you. We do have a lot of line items in our operating expenses, so I'm not going to cover every item. Please let me know if you have any questions on some of our on any item. A couple of them that I wanted to highlight would be our construction materials line item, 0520, and we are projecting a slight decrease of $35,000 for next year, giving us a budgeting approximately $153,000. In that item, we pay for culverts, primarily when we are resurfacing a roadway in a future year, usually the year ahead of time. We are taking a look at the state of those culverts. If we need to replace any of those culverts before we lay new asphalt on top of them, we are replacing those the next year. Last year we had to do quite a few culverts, 7 or 8 large culverts on Tama Road. So this would include the concrete culverts. It would include the materials that go along with replacing those culverts. Let's see. 0553, which is our software item for $89,000. We are showing an increase of $31,000. We would like to purchase some pavement management software in fiscal year 26. We see a need for using that to help us make decisions. We would like to start focusing more on preventative maintenance, treatments on our roadways. We'd like to find a way to keep track of those preventative maintenance and the condition of the road from year to year. We see this as a good tool for helping us know when to resurface roads as well as when to put a preventative treatment on those roadways.
Sorry, Kathy.
Yes.
Just a quick question on this line in particular.
Mhm.
So on our software, obviously, 23 it was 500 and change, 15,000 in 24, and we're quite a ways from the amended 25. Is that just what's the changes that's happening in that line?
I'm gonna ask Allison.
Michelle could probably speak to that some, but a couple years ago, she asked us to try to capture as much software as we could in that 0553. So it was being paid for wherever we thought maybe fit in that description. And then with the direction of the auditors or however Michelle decided that, so. That's kind of why you're seeing that increase, and then,
And then so it's probably just a renewal calendar issue of why we're at
I
5%.
think, well, I think they budgeted this year to purchase something new that
Yeah.
hasn't maybe been paid for yet.
yep, so Fleetio is that fleet software that we came to you with a
Yep.
couple months ago. That's on there, off the top
So
of my head,
that'll
yeah.
that'll end up coming off.
Yeah, so this is all as of November, so
As of
we've
November.
spent a little
Yeah.
bit of money
Okay.
since then,
Okay.
yeah,
Just
yep.
wanna make- Thank you.
CAD software, that's another one, yeah, yep.
Okay, another large item for us is the 0575 fuels and lubricants. We are budgeting that at $340,000 for FY '26. This is a slight decrease. Our shop foreman feels like we'll be using a little bit less on the oil side. But of course, it is very difficult to budget to make a prediction on how much diesel and gasoline you will use every year. That is so largely dependent on the weather. So this one can fluctuate, but this is really our best guess of what we should budget for. Moving on to the lower portion of the operating expenses.
Sorry, one more
Yep.
question on fuel. So
Yes.
are we anticipating less usage of fuel? Are we looking more at just less cost?
So we looked at the previous years and we felt like we could probably get a better, more accurate numbers.
Right sizing?
So we just wanted to be a little less conservative and probably budget more realistically for FY '26, because we are, you'll hear later on, we're trying to
Yeah.
put more money, show more money, save more money.
Yeah.
Maybe this is a more realistic estimate of what we will spend on fuel. But again, that can vary depending on the weather.
Yep.
Anything to add?
Nope.
Either? Okay, 0684, another large line item for us, we're budgeting that at $253,000. That's machine and equipment repair. We're just showing a very small increase, but I just wanted to tell you more about that item because it is such a large amount for us. $250,000. This is where our snowplow blades would be, where all of our large maintenance items such as tires, snowplow blades. This is where we would pay for any repairs or services where we have to take our trucks we have to outsource that work. For example, to Don's truck in Fairbank or truck centers here in Evansdale or numerous other local people that help us out throughout the year with our equipment. So that's where we put that item. Okay, and then moving on to the machine and equipment vehicle purchase, I just wanted to mention that because that was talked about yesterday. We are budgeting $21,500 for that this year. A common rental items that we have to incur every year is, for example, we need to rent a saw to cut the asphalt when we are replacing pipes. We want a smooth transition. As we open up the roadway, we saw both sides of the road, of course, to replace the culverts, so that is a common purchase for us every year is renting a saw. Renting an excavator for ditch cleanouts is another very common. We do that virtually, we do that every year. We need to rent another excavator for about 6 weeks while we do ditch cleanouts. And we do have some expenditures for a lift as well, which we provided that information to Michelle. The last item that I wanted to talk about in our operating expenses would be our road and asphalt supplies. This is by far our largest item. We're budgeting $1.2 million this year, and this covers our rock, and it covers any supplies such as rock and asphalt. For rock, we'll be re-rocking the gravel road system. We are typically averaging about 20 miles of re-rock for every grader district, and we have 9 grader districts in the county, So that's 180 to 200 miles of rock that we are replacing 300 tons per mile on that roadway, that gravel road. We also have to place spot rock in the spring when it's, if the conditions are soft, spot rock may be needed. So we are asking for, I guess we're showing a small decrease, and that's primarily because of our salt that we are budgeting for. The road salt is going to be approximately $10 a ton less next year. So even though our costs for aggregate keep going up by about 50 cents a ton every year, we are showing a small decrease in our rock salt next year. So that's why you're seeing an overall decrease in that large line item. Can I answer any questions about our operations portion of the budget?
The $5,300 decrease, is that factoring in the lift rental? In 0698.
Yep, so, most of that decrease is actually based on the quotes for excavator rentals that we got.
Okay.
So we go and get quotes because it's over $10,000 usually, so, just based on the quotes that Wayne got, we thought we could probably decrease that.
Okay, so this doesn't include, if we were to purchase that lift, that Mike talked about yesterday, this does not include that, which,
That does not include that.
Yeah, to be honest, we didn't really hear about that until just recently,
Yep.
so
Yep.
we didn't have a chance to put that in there.
fair enough.
Okay, I wanted to talk about our capital expenses. And clearly in this department, our largest capital expense is our road and bridge construction. However, like I said, we're gonna talk more about that when we get to the local option sales tax fund and when we talk about the 5-year plan. So we'll just focus right now on our capital item expenses, our equipment expenses. And you can see this is a graph of the last 7 years of our capital expenses. And we spend a lot of money. We have a lot of iron that's needed to keep our roads clear and open throughout the year. So, one way we're able to do that so successfully is a constant rotation, an effort to keep up on replacement of our large equipment, mainly our motor graders, our excavators, our single axle dump trucks, and our tandem axle dump trucks. So that's why our capital item, our equipment expenses is so large every year. So this year we are asking for $1.091 million in equipment expenses. And we'll talk a little bit more about each item in particular. The first item is a grade all or a sign truck. This is the first year I've ever put an or in an item. And again, we were researching, we have a grade all, which is a brand name of a piece of equipment that's a specialized excavator that has a telescoping boom that can extend in and out, and it's able to travel around the county at near highway speeds. It's been a very useful, practical piece of equipment that we really like. Our current grade all is approximately 15 years old. We recently found out in the last 6 weeks that there are currently no grade all dealers in Iowa right at the moment. We are hopeful that that will change and this will make it more practical to consider replacing the grade all. If we are not able, if this goes on, because we will not be able to purchase anything until after July 1st, if time goes on and we find out that that's not feasible, we will look for another option. It might be feasible, we just don't know yet. So we have placed a sign truck in there as well. A sign truck was in our, or it still is in our FY 27 budget. That is also showing some age. The auger on the sign truck is in need of some repair. We are currently analyzing if we should repair or replace the auger, or if it would be better to just replace the sign truck. So those are some kind of last minute details that we are working on. So we would like to budget $550, and as we get closer to actually spending the money after July 1st, we will certainly be updating you on the decisions we've made for that amount of money.
With both of those pieces, or either of those pieces, is there a resale market for those? Or just because of their age? So,
So we're finding out that there's not much of a resale market for a gray all. Can't speak about a resale on a truck.
Usually the 8 to 10 years, if you keep them, there's no resale. 3 to 5 years, there might be 35 to 40%.
Sign truck.
Sign truck. Sign truck, I've gotten some estimates and, got a guy up from Des Moines, so we're gonna
What about
look at the
reselling
cost.
one? What about reselling one?
Reselling one, there's no cost, there's no resale on it. They basically want you to keep it, I mean, it's 10 years. Yeah, they said they can't get rid of it, you're better off to go to auction. So,
Thank you, Zach. Mower, a disc mower, Mike Henderson talked to you yesterday about the importance of keeping up with mowers because they are so used in the summertime months. We have several different types of mowers. Our gravel road system uses a disc mower for us to mow the shoulders of the roadway. We are budgeting for a replacement for our disc mower. We have several disc mowers, 3, I believe.
We have 3 disc mowers at this time.
So they last from 7 to 10 years. So we're doing a rotation, just a routine replacement of our disc mower. We would like to purchase a 3/4 ton pickup truck for our road foreman. When we purchase a pickup truck, well, first of all, our road foreman and our maintenance superintendent put a lot of miles on their pickup trucks. Usually in 3 years, they can put 140 or 150,000 miles on their pickup trucks. So we're trying to maintain a rotation of 3 to 4 years on those trucks. And when we purchase a new pickup truck, what that means for us is we rotate, we get rid of one of our oldest pickup trucks out in the out shops. Our department has about 25 to 27 pickup trucks. They are present in all of our shops. There are several at Longfellow. So we do have quite a few of them, and we take out the oldest pickup truck and rotate, past this, the foreman's or the superintendent's truck down to one of the shops, or gets repurposed. We are also budgeting for a chipper. Our current chipper is very old, 30 years old. Yeah, it's 30 years old. I believe we got it from conservation.
Yeah.
So Griffin is budgeting for that. As we mentioned, he will be submitting for an IRVM grant so that we can get up to $15,000 reimbursement. So he is demoing various types of chippers now, working with conservation to see what is out on the market today. We need to, again, keep up with our single axle dump truck rotation as well as our tandem axle dump truck rotations. I know you are aware of that. Of course, the cost of vehicles, trucks continues to escalate, so we are budgeting $235,000 for a single axle tandem dump truck for next year. And then I'm gonna have Ryan talk about the diesel hammer, because it's a pretty specialized piece of equipment and why we like to purchase this.
So the diesel hammer would be used by our bridge crew, so our bridge crew is normally building or they're building or repairing about 2 or 3 bridges a year. So currently we're doing that with a gravity hammer, so I mean it consists of them lifting the weight with the hammer and then letting it free fall to drive the piling into the ground. This would run with diesel, so that the diesel would operate the hammer and have it go up and down on its own. It would be a little easier to operate for our operators. It would also be a better matched piece of equipment for our current crane. Our current crane we purchased 3 or 4 years ago. It's a little different style than what we had previously. So just the type of crane would be better operated with a diesel hammer to help some of the components last a little longer on the crane as well. So again, they would use it for driving piling. It would make it a little safer operation for them, but it would also be a better match for our current equipment. Questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. I did want to mention that another advantage to the diesel hammer that we've talked about is We have a very experienced crane operator, and knows how to really operate the crane as it is. He has his own crane, he knows how to operate it with the diesel hammer, with the gravity hammer. We do anticipate his retirement, maybe in 5 years. So we feel like with this diesel hammer, that is going to allow us to train a new crane operator and be more successful with someone with less experience. As we get, as we transition from a very experienced crane operator, we feel like that's gonna be an easier transition. The last item we are asking for is to replace, we have a 2006 Trailblazer that the previous engineer bought. We are asking that be replaced. And we would be able to sell it on gov deals, et cetera. I would propose that we be allowed to buy a used SUV, all-wheel drive SUV. We really don't know a whole lot about, didn't really have one particular kind of vehicle in mind. We just budgeted, we thought this would be a fair price for a used vehicle. Okay, any other questions on capital expenses, equipment expenses? Okay, just to summarize our, the 120 fund, you can see we're showing the revenue there at $9.4 million. We've got all the salaries there, and we put in the operating expenses as well as our capital equipment. And that's giving us a total of $8.49 million for total expenses. We are projecting an FY '26 out of the 120 account. Moving down to the list, we are showing a revenue from, again, the city of Cedar Falls. That has to come to us as a revenue. We are paying for a seal coat. We'll be seal coating to the local option sales tax, but we can't take in other revenues from that. So we are showing it as a revenue in this budget, the 120 account. And then we will also be paving Raymond Road. I've been talking to you about paving Raymond Road and working with the city of Gilbertville as well as working with the city of Raymond to include a portion of their work in that construction. So that's showing the $230,000 that we are paying for their portion of the work will be shown in this budget. So subtracting all that out, we're showing a net of $685,000 in this account. So we're hopeful that at the end of fiscal year '26, we'll have about $685,000 left over in this in the 120 account. Okay, I wanted to talk about the local option sales tax fund now, the Fund 167. Just as a little background for all of you, this was approved by the voters in Blackhawk County, probably 20 years ago, and it was recently renewed. I want to say just 2 or 3 years ago, it was renewed by the voters. And as 50% of that money going to roads and bridge construction, it's very specifically directed at construction projects here in Blackhawk County. And 50% of that would be going towards tax relief for the citizens of the county. Historically, what the county did was they saved, the money went into a pot and then we repaid bonds. When we got our new finance director, Michelle had a great idea that we would use that money on a routine basis. We could use it annually. We could budget for and use that money just like its own separate account. So she created this 167 account for us, which has been very helpful. We really like the flexibility. We've been able to put a lot of construction work, routine construction projects in that account. Thereby, we're not paying for bonding anymore. We're just using the money and able to budget for it correctly. What this is doing is it's allowing us to save money in the secondary road fund, which has some flexibility where we can use it for other purposes, such as a building. We don't have that flexibility with the 167 account. Just to show you what we're budgeting for that account, the 167 fund, Michelle is projecting that we will receive $2.04 million in local option sales tax funding in FY '26. We've given you a breakdown of some of the salaries with some of the projects I'll show you on the next slide. And we have approximately $3.155 million worth of projects for FY '26 that we would like to budget out of this local option sales tax or the 167 account. Which gives us a net fund balance for this year, for FY '26 of $1.11 million. So we do have a carryover, which is not shown on this chart, a carryover from the local option sales tax fund of $2.361 million. So we'll have, we have more than enough to pay for the $3.1 million. Are there any questions on that? Okay, these are the projects that we are proposing to complete next FY '26 with that local option sales tax. We have a couple of bridge replacements by our county crew. Our four-man team will be replacing 2 bridges on Mount Vernon Road and Hoff Road. We are budgeting about $133,000 to do that work. And then we have a bridge replacement on Eldora Road. We are also going to hope to try something different this year, this coming fiscal year, for pulling in, we would like to regrade gravel road. Many counties around the state, as time goes on, the gravel roads lose the shape, the original shape, obviously. They've been in place for many, many years. They tend to get wider as time goes on. Some counties are finding some benefit to narrowing them back up to their original width that they were. So we have a few miles of roads, in particular gravel roads, we are proposing to try that on in the next year. And then we have some contractor-led projects where we're paying a contractor to do the work. And one of those is our large Raymond Road paving. We're proposing to pay for that exclusively with the local option sales tax fund, that money. And we also have some gravel road approaches on Highway 218. The DOT will be resurfacing Highway 218 this coming summer, the summer of 2025. I've told you how it's important for us to pave an asphalt fillet at our paved road approaches with our intersections on gravel roads. So we are budgeting for the DOT to include that work in their contract. Can I answer any questions about this, the local option sales tax fund?
So the Raymond Road project, that's getting refunded? Or not refunded, but there's gonna be some reimbursement from, or is that 1.08, that's our portion?
That's the full cost of the project.
Okay.
Is what we're estimating, right? The full cost. No, go ahead.
So that's our portion, 1.08 is our portion.
Got it.
And then on the previous slide, she talked about 230,
Yep.
that's gonna be the city's portion.
Okay, I didn't know if we need to do.
Because local option is restricted to local option sales tax income only. So if we have a project that's being reimbursed by another agency, we don't want that reimbursement going into the local option sales tax fund.
Gotcha.
So we can keep that clean with just local option sales
Okay.
tax.
Makes sense.
Thanks, Allison. Okay, moving on, I know this is a really busy slide, hard to read slide. This is our 5-year equipment plan. And I guess the most important thing to say is we are still continuing to average about $1 million a year on equipment, giving us a total of just over $5 million, $5.4 million for a 5-year plan. And we're continuing to replace motor graders, tandem axle dump trucks, single axle dump trucks. One thing we would like to add in 2027 is Griffin has purchased a spray logger this current fiscal year. Just a few months ago, we came to you with that item. We would like that, it's a computerized system that tracks where herbicide has been sprayed. We would like to put that on the gator and perhaps a backpack style sprayer. So that's one unique thing. More pickup replacements. And then in 2029, we would like to replace an SUV. The engineer's office has another SUV that we would like to replace as well. Can I answer any questions about the 5-year equipment plan? Okay. Okay, so I wanted to turn your attention to a new building. That really concludes the talk about the 120 fund and the 176 fund. So I told you last year about the importance of, last budget session about the importance of us needing to replace our shop building, our main shop facility out at Longfellow. I have a whole separate presentation on the current condition of the shop facility. If you or any other board of supervisors members are interested in seeing that, I can certainly show you that again or speak to those supervisors individually. We have a lot of photos and pictures but the main shop was built in 1959. It's outdated, there's really inadequate office space, inadequate workspace. This is the main portion that is very inadequate. We do have a newer, larger addition. There are 2 additions in the back of this building that were added on since 1959. It's kind of not very efficient as far as lighting and heating and cooling go. They've been separate, some of the systems have been separate, and it's just inefficient operations at that building in many respects. We would propose to build a new building. We would also propose, just over the last year, I think we've come to the realization that there would be benefits to us. We've always known there would be benefits to us of being co-located with the secondary road staff, just due to some of the attention with being more space needed in the courthouse by other departments. Perhaps it would be best for us to leave the courthouse. That would free up some space on this floor for more other types of work. So that did increase the cost a little bit. We did talk to a consultant about a year ago and got an estimate of $8 or $9 million. We're using the estimate of $10 million as also including the engineer space. We would also propose to build enough bays that we could maintain and service all of the county vehicles, with the exception of conservation. They continue to have their own mechanic and their own workspace for that type of work. But with your approval, we would like to look at being able to facilitate the maintenance of all county vehicles. And this would allow extra space to do that, workspace. So we need to talk about, or I'd like to talk to you about now, how can we accomplish paying for this new building? With an estimated cost of $10 million, I guess one of the first things we wanted to say was, before we move money out of our secondary road fund, or can consider secondary road fund money paying for a new building, what are our needs in the secondary road fund? Obviously, we need to have an operating fund that continues to be able to absorb flooding and heavy snowfall years. We feel that a 40% operating fund is probably adequate, is probably a good place to be. So with an $8 or $9 million operating expenses every year, we need approximately $3.5 million to keep operating every year to pay our employees, etc. We would like to create a new line item in the fund, the 120 fund, in the secondary the secondary county road fund. We'd like to create a new line item, maybe call it buildings or building. And then we could move money into that line item, say at the end of the fiscal year. Could it, in effect, budget to move money into that line item? We think this would have a couple advantages for us. We'd be able to see that we are moving money into that line item. We'd be able, like any savings account, you can see that you're making progress towards a goal. Another important reason for that, we feel, is that, for example, if the public or other supervisors, legislatures, they do look at county budgets, and they're gonna see a large fund balance in the Blackhawk County Secondary Road Fund. We'd like to show that that is not just sitting out there for no reason. We do need more money for roads. We would certainly welcome a gas tax increase. We don't want, really large numbers of money being unspent sitting in a fund. So we feel like if we could designate this as, being saved for a reason, then it would make us look like, we have a reasonable amount of money in our secondary road fund. So we would propose to move approximately $2.5 to $3 million into this line item at the end of fiscal year 25. And then hopefully by the end of fiscal year 26, I just told you we would have a surplus of about $650,000. We propose to move another $500,000 if all goes according to plan into that line item. And then, of course, we would take further action in subsequent years to move money from our fund balance into that line item. This is gonna take us a long time to get to $10 million. I also wanted to mention that last budget session, we were asked about if we could repay bonds out of our secondary road fund. And in talking with Michelle and in talking with Mike Trinan, we've collectively agreed that that's not allowed by the Code of Iowa. There's a couple references here where it says you can't repay bonds with secondary road fund money. So we'd really like to talk to you either today or some point in the budget sessions about how you can help us reach our goal of $10 million to get us towards a new building. We'd really like to be under construction, say by 2030. 2029 or 2030 would be advantageous for us. So I thank you for your support over the years, and we welcome any questions, any separate discussions any of the board members would like to have. We'd certainly welcome that contact with you. Can I answer any questions?
I was gonna say, thanks, a lot of good information, and definitely interested in hearing more, I guess, later.
Yeah,
Especially with everybody present.
yeah, the building, I know it's certainly important to us to figure out ways to get us there before 2030.
Do you wanna
Be as aggressive as possible there.
put anything out, Michelle?
Did you have like, other solutions and things that you'd like to discuss and bring forward when we have that, or are you wanting us to do some homework on our side, or combination of both?
A combination of both.
Okay.
We've talked about more ways we can be financially responsible, be a bit, be tighter in our spending, so we are working on some of the ways for that. And then we would like to talk with you about, would it be possible to, we've talked about bonding in the past, there are limitations, of course, to bonding for a building.
Mhm.
So there
We
are,
have some information on that, obviously.
yeah.
No, appreciate the solutions you come up with too, and what you're looking at doing, so.
You guys are pretty damn tight on your budget on the right side, so don't sell yourself short that there's a whole lot of ringing that you guys can do. I really appreciate that all of your numbers are always thought out, they're always thorough, they're researched.
We appreciate it, like I said, it's a real team effort in this department.
Yeah, you guys have met for months, and I know just even recently, worked on it all year, but worked on it for months as a group, so.
Yeah.
Much appreciated, but yeah, I appreciate just the fact that you've come with solutions and ways to look at it too, not just say, here's our budget and.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
I think on the shop, we're going to need to explore bonding. And so I'd like to dive deeper into what that would look like and how repayments would work and such. And I know it would be a large enough bond. I believe it would trigger a public vote. Is that correct? But I think that's probably the most viable option that we've got.
Do you want to comment on that, Michelle?
need something up right now.
So I can make a general comment and Michelle can
Okay.
jump in.
Go ahead.
So Michelle has told us, and Mike Trinan is sitting down and talking about this, and the code says that a building is not an essential county purpose. So unfortunately, it's not. So then you have to look under the section of Iowa code that for cities and counties that goes by, has a breakdown of what can be bonded. The amount that can be bonded is based on the population of your city or county. And I think we thought that it was $1.2 million.
I'm
I'm sure.
looking, I don't know that, not certain a building qualifies for that. And so we have some more homework we would want to do. I just came out with, they've now switched that so that it floats slightly with inflation, but if I understand correctly, a building would be a general county purpose, which has a really low, unfortunately, limit. And I don't wanna tell you the wrong amount, so I'm trying to find it. A few $100,000, I think, is what we could bond for without a public vote.
What was it you thought, Kathy? I mean, just what did you mention?
There's
Well,
one that's 1.3
So, just so there is
also, but
something to explore, basically.
and like Michelle said, I thought we figured we would have to go to a public vote, which I'm not opposed to.
No.
it would just depend on
Take a
how
tour of
we
the
choose to
facility.
do it.
Some of us have seen, I was
Oh,
gonna say that, so it's, but yeah, it's not just, but appreciate the information. But yeah, obviously bonding, you brought up sinking fund too at one point in time, I don't know.
Right, we did bring that up in talking about that with the finance director, Michelle, and ourselves. We feel like that's probably really not necessary, that if we just are able to show a new line item in the 120 account as our building savings, then that's probably the best way to go about this.
So in years where that couldn't be done or services were needed and we had to spend on the services, we just forego that amount or reduce the amount or whatever, is that how you're seeing?
Right,
Rather than,
yes.
I mean, at best, you'd like to do it that way, but if, yeah,
Yes.
since we can't come back on services.
And if there were a true emergency and a flood that washed out 4 bridges or a river bridge and we needed that money, obviously it would still be there. Hopefully we'd get some FEMA reimbursements, but we would probably need to float that for a year or two.
Yeah.
So, it would still allow us to save it, but it'd still be available for a rainy day.
Question on local option sales tax, I know that there was just a countywide vote, what, last year? Was it last year, ballot?
23, I think.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was gonna say,
Okay, and that basically eliminated the sunset, right?
There's no sunset.
But we didn't change the language. If that language were changed, would we be able to bond against those dollars?
You can I speak to that?
Yeah,
sure.
You can run another, if you wanna change the usage, you can run another election on that.
and that wouldn't rescind the current, it would just, if it were adopted, adjust to the new language, if it failed, it would stay the current. So
That's
it's,
correct.
there's a low risk at that point. So then, would we be able to bond on a project using local option sales tax, or is that?
Possibly.
Okay.
We need to talk about what language we would use, and I'd wanna clear it through our bond attorneys first, but, I think with the right language, it's possible. Knowing then, that takes away from what she's doing for construction now, so it's all
Sure.
kinda circular.
Moving parts, yeah. That, still, it's options, that's what, yeah, we're
Yeah.
looking for is solutions to
Yeah.
get it done, so. More the better.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Caitlin with Public Health.
So Caitlin, do you wanna do your PowerPoint first and then look at number slides, or how do you wanna do that?
The department summary is in my slides, if that's,
Oh, I wasn't aware of that, okay.
yeah, does that?
It's fine.
So I can just-
Again, I haven't reviewed it,
No,
so
I was
I.
just
I can just skip
speak
past
to
that part and
No,
then
it's
we can
fine,
come
go
back.
ahead and do it that
Do
way.
you wanna?
Apparently, that's becoming.
If it's all right with everyone, we're gonna take a
Oh,
quick 2-minute recess to, yep.
sure, okay, I guess it's okay. As long as we can read it, Caitlin. Yeah.
You can leave if you want. Thank you. Really?
Okay,
This
then
one,
that would be
no.
fine, that would be fine.
Just let one of us know.
That's my
We
only
don't call her.
comment.
See you later.
All right, good deal, okay, then we're perfect, you're good.
I mean, we can share it real quick if you want.
This is what's so funny, now that we did this, we don't need to, I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
it's
Al.
not a big deal,
We hurried and it doesn't matter.
because it's just a matter of her pushing 2 buttons.
Yeah, that's.
And it's on the screen and then flipping.
No, that's gonna be really good. 2 cents, probably just confusing. Maybe at the end, we'll put mine up, just to prove we can do it.
Yeah, we can do that, that's fine.
Because the people that did it before couldn't see
You're on my thought process.
what I put up if you were at the podium, and now we think you'll be able to now, so that's what's kind of.
Camera out of share, so you're just gonna push. Now to share hers, we would flip her to black.
So I don't need to stop sharing.
At the end, if she wants to post hers, you just, because you're already on podium, you're just gonna hit laptop. Because she is technically wireless, but it's a laptop. So.
All right, thank you.
2 minutes.
All right, yeah, yeah.
All right, good morning, board. Caitlin Emmerich with Blackhawk County Public Health. And thanks for having me this morning to talk about our budget proposal for FY26. I do have a couple of our public health team with me, Todd Burkhart, our deputy director, and Todd Parsons, who is our new fiscal coordinator. So Todd kind of came in after most of the budget was done, but is learning and getting ready for this next budget cycle for FY27. I do want to thank our people internally before I get started. You know, I'm up here talking, but as we all know, this is a group effort among many people, so I just want to thank them real quick. Lori Ridinghouse, our account specialist, was filling in as our fiscal coordinator during the time that we put this presentation together, and she really helped a lot. In addition to Ty, who came up to speed very quickly with the first budget process here, has done budgets before, but not with Blackhawk County. And then our program managers, Bethany Fratsky, Sarah Mergenthaler, Jared Perminer, and Tanya Wilder. And then, of course, our finance office, Michelle, and now Joe, that he's on board, are always extremely helpful, and I could not do this without them, so. Going through kind of our purpose statement, we're becoming more familiar with visions and missions, so I just wanted to take a minute to share ours for public health. This is something that you've seen many times before, so I won't dwell on it, but just kind of a reminder of our scope of work and why we do what we do. And then financial metrics. These were reported in the fall, but I forgot to do it. I was so ready, I forgot to do it. Our financial metrics that we reported in the fall. So these four metrics represent our 4 operational areas that we work in. So direct medical and oral health services really represents the majority of our clinical work that we provide to the community. We had fewer encounters in FY24. That's primarily attributed to our iSmile program. We did have fewer consents returned by participating schools in our iSmile program, so those numbers went down a little bit. The team is working this year to get those consent returns back up, because we know that we definitely have a lot of kiddos that we need to see. Environmental inspections were down a little bit, but I wouldn't say significantly. That's from our environmental team. And those environmental inspections include all the different inspections that our environmental team does. So that's food safety related inspections,
I like that.
private wells, community wells, private septics, healthy homes, childhood lead poisoning prevention, pool inspections, tattoo establishments, trash haulers, mosquito surveillance, salvage yards, and rubble sites. For communicable disease cases reported, we're up a little bit in our communicable disease. So this includes all of our sexually transmitted infections, our vaccine preventable infections, enteric diseases, those kinds of things. And then our fourth category here, non-direct client care services, primarily this comes out of our community health program. So these are clients that we help provide care coordination for, clients that we serve through our Care for Yourself breast and cervical cancer program, or I Would Get Screened, our First Five program, which is for children between the ages of 0 and 5, our Medicaid informing, presumptive eligibility, and Pick a Better Snack programs, which occur in the school. Okay, so I'm gonna go in order of the department summary that you have in front of you. So we should be able to just kind of go through the flow of that. First, I'm gonna cover revenue. So we're projecting an overall increase of revenue of 4.16%, which is about $100,000 in our revenue. We are either have seen or anticipate seeing changes to our revenue in FY26, which I've listed here on the slide. So we have a couple of programs that, or grants that are ending. So our physical activity access project, this was through Iowa Department of Health and Human Services, that ended this year. It was a federal fiscal year program, so we were already into FY25 when it ended, but that has already ended. Also through Iowa HHS, funding that we're seeing end is our disease surveillance and partner services for sexually transmitted infection funding. That is ending in December, the end of December of this year, 2025, so right in the middle of FY26. I do hope that we're able to recover that funding in some other way, because we definitely have a need for the services, but those funds, we've been notified by HHS that they're going to go away. Our doula project revenue is decreasing, and the project is actually a 5-year project that began in FY21 and it will end in FY26, that project will. Our Wellmark match and Waterloo Community Foundation special project funding is ending. So these are 2 grants that are through our community health program. Primarily, they've all been passed through. So the revenue has decreased, but the expenses that came with it are all also decreasing. So this one is not really that big of an impact to our total budget, but you'll see it reflected in the revenue and in the expenses. We have an addition of funding. So while we're seeing some drop off or decrease, we are adding some revenue. The overdose data to action states funding is something that's already started. That is through Iowa Department of Health and Human Services, and that is a revenue of $160,000 annually for a 5-year project period. And then most grant funding that we receive, kind of with the exception of the ones that I've talked about, is remaining flat. So while that's not necessarily something that is kind of noticeable in terms of year to year, the funding has remained flat for several years in a row now. We have some grants that the funding has been flat for 5 years, or the funding has been flat for 3 years, and as we all know, our operating expenses do not remain flat. So that is a little bit concerning for us that our grant revenue, particularly through Iowa HHS, is remaining flat. So I do hope that, I know that there are some efforts at the Department of HHS to ask the legislature for an increase in funding, particularly for the local public health services grant this year, and I do hope that that is successful because we have seen a decrease in our local public health services funding over the past 5 years. And then this is just what you have in front of you. I'm not gonna stay on this slide, but if you wanna look at your paper, I've covered everything in terms of revenue. So, are there any questions for me regarding revenue?
Maybe you wanna talk more, unless I missed it, about the one that went up?
The overdose data to action?
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe you did
I
already.
did. Is there something else you wanted me to touch on?
No, just the amount, I didn't.
Yeah, yep,
I
so
must
that's
have-
160,000.
That's for 5 years?
It's
Or
annually.
per year? For
Per
5
year, for a 5-year project period, yep, so, and with those funds, we are, we have a staff member that we've brought on board to kind of be the program director for that grant. And we have some, subcontracts with Pathways, for mostly peer recovery services, which is a requirement of that grant. Anything else? Okay, I'm gonna move to expenditures then. So the things I'm going to cover in expenditures, it was either last year or the year before, we kind of changed the approach with expenditures to budget for items that are predictable for replacement. Previously, these items would have been included in one-time requests, and that result in kind of inconsistency of the budget ask year to year. So my goal in, kind of this regular replacement cycle is to make the budget more consistent year to year and be able to kind of get ahead of things that we know are going to need replaced. So these things include cell phones, that we would have a regular rotation for every 3 years on those. Computer equipment every 5 years, and vehicles every 7 years. And then also hardware, so printers, scanners, copiers, that kind of thing, so that kind of the computer equipment that goes with our computers. What I will say about hardware and printers and scanners and copiers is one thing that we're currently looking at, but is not reflected in the budget presentation, is our copy lease agreements. Currently, we pay monthly to lease our copiers through a company that includes like the maintenance and service contract and stuff like that. We've had quite a few conversations about that recently, and been in consultation with Al, and we've determined that it may be more cost effective to just purchase those outright and set up our service contracts differently. So that's one thing that's not reflected here, but because it would be a cost savings, I'm not kind of too worried about the fact that that's not accurately represented right now until we decide to make a change. Okay, so first in expenditures is salaries and benefits. So in our salaries and benefits category, we're reflecting an overall increase of 5.03%. This includes a couple of different things. So our Unit 8 bargaining unit contract calls for a 3.5% wage increase on July 1 of 2025, so that's reflected in our salaries and benefits. We did add that new position to work on that opioid data to action grant, which is the community program coordinator for substance abuse. We are anticipating a reduction of a public health nurse in our disease surveillance program area due to an anticipated retirement. And I'll explain that a little bit. So those disease surveillance and partner services funds that we are going to see expire in the middle of FY26, we actually borrowed disease surveillance. We borrowed from disease surveillance to support public health nursing in our tuberculosis program. So we kind of shifted grant funds over to disease surveillance team to kind of pay more for our disease surveillance staff to allow us to add a public health nurse position in our TB program. I think either a year or two ago that we did that because of the need we were seeing in tuberculosis program. with that revenue stream ending, we kind of have to adjust back to the model that was before we did that shift. So we are anticipating a retirement, pretty confidently anticipating a retirement in December of 2025, and that's when we're going to that would allow us to then shift back to support the previous kind of staffing structure for disease surveillance and tuberculosis nursing that we had previously. So our salary total is $5,921,295, which is 90.15% of our department expenses. It's pretty consistently about 90% of our operating expenses, or of our departmental expenses every year. Any questions about salaries and benefits?
So the TB case worker,
Mhm.
is that position staying? Is the caseload sort of dictating that it's still there, or we're?
Are you referring to the one that we added a couple of years ago? Yeah, I have that
Okay.
still budgeted as 1.0 FTE.
Okay.
Our TB cases have gone down slightly, but they've not returned to normal.
Okay.
Kind of pre-increase levels, yeah, so I have that budgeted in
Just
there.
looking at that public health nurse thing, if there was.
Any other questions? I guess I got a little bit ahead of myself. So the full-time equivalent summary, this is just what reflects what I just said. So there's kind of some asterisks in our disease surveillance row here. That mid-year will reduce from 12 FTEs in that program to 11, thus reducing us from 59.8 to 58.8 FTEs total for the department in the middle of FY26. So I wasn't really sure the best way to reflect this, because usually we don't make a change halfway through the year, but that's what that reflects. Okay, I'm gonna keep moving to operating expenses. So these should be in numerical order, so as you look at your operating expenses on the department summary that you have, we should be going in order of the ones that I wanna highlight. I'm not highlighting all of them, I'm just highlighting where there are changes. So starting in 0453, subscriptions, books and publications, there is a change there because we made some changes in how we took our accreditation fees essentially from professional services and we put it into that subscription books and publications there, so that's why you're seeing the change there. In software, that one has increased quite a bit because the budget guidance that we got this year was to make sure that we were budgeting software in software. So we've taken items that were previously in 0442, 0453, 0625, 0670, and 1059. All of those different places and put them all into software. So that's why you'll see quite a bit of increase in our software line item. We also did budget for about a 7% increase in our software that we currently have, in addition to moving from the other areas into software. So both of those are reflected in that increase of software line item. We reduced our office furniture line item because of our pending renovation project, that we're not going to do any office reconfigurations prior to renovation. And minor equipment, I believe that was a reduction that we just adjusted that to align with our actual expenses for the previous operating fiscal years. Any questions on those? I'm gonna keep going. 0580 food. So we do have food budgeted in our budget for some grant funded programs. So Pick a Better Snack, where we do nutrition education in the school system, we purchase food for that. We purchase food for our First 5 program, where we do lunch and learns with providers to teach them about what the First 5 program is. And so those are kind of a couple of things where food shows up in our line item. There is an increase in our grant funded line item for first five for food, so you'll see an increase in that one. In 0602, the increase reflects the increase from PDCM. In 0670 for professional services, this one always has quite a bit of movement, especially if we have pass-through dollars, because this is where our subcontracts show up. So what is reflecting in the change in professional services is that we're increasing the proportion of our FR CARP, which is a grant for opioid prevention for first responders. We're increasing the proportion of that grant that passes through to Pathways, and we're adding a contract, that subcontract for Pathways for that overdose data to action subcontract in a total of $63,829. But we've made some reductions with those pass-through funds, including the physical activity access, our Wellmark, and our Waterloo Community Foundation, and our doula reimbursements. So you're seeing a reflection of an increase and a decrease happening in that line item. For 0676, health services, the couple of major things that come out of here that are reflecting some changes is we moved the way that we reimburse our doulas. We changed that from professional services to health services. I think it codes a little bit better. And then that's also where our new employee pre-employment screening costs go. We have seen an increase in those pre-employment screening costs over the last couple of years. So that is reflected there. And then 0692, advertising and publishing, we have COVID response funds, which we call a bridge access grant, that has ended. That ended December 31st, and so there's a reduction in advertising and publishing for those advertising funds. Any questions on these operating expense items?
Caitlin, you mentioned that increase in food, is that for more events or just cost?
I'll be honest, I don't know exactly.
Oh.
I know that we have kind of a limit. They have a little formula that they give us for how much we can use for incentives based on the total grant award. And so that's where we've made the adjustment. I don't know if the grant has changed to require us to do more engagements, or if just the cost of food is increasing. I'm not exactly sure, but I can get back to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. And I'm gonna move to capital request. So our capital requests typically involve vehicles, and so that is the case this year. So just to kind of give a picture of what our vehicle situation looks like, we have 20 vehicles in our fleet. As I mentioned before, I've moved to kind of a regular rotation and replacement of things, so we don't get into a situation where we have a bunch of vehicles that need replaced all at once, which is kind of where we're at. We have a number of 2010 Ford Fusions that were purchased all at the same time, and they're all declining at the same time as well. So last year, we asked for 3 vehicles to replace 3 in our current fleet. One was a 09 Ford Ranger, one was an 07 Chevy Malibu, and one was a 2010 Ford Fusion. And we are anticipating that those vehicles are going to arrive in February. So we're very excited about that. The team is very excited about that. In this year's capital request, we're requesting to replace another 3 vehicles. So those would be 3 of the 2010 Ford Fusions, vehicle numbers ending in 50, 51, and 54. So 2 of those vehicles actually are not in rotation right now because the mechanic that we use at the City Garage has said that they should not be driven, so they're parked. So those two are ending in 050 and 051. So 050 has been parked since April of 2024 due to mechanic recommendation to not use it. This one, the shop does not use the lift when servicing the vehicle due to the amount of rust in the frame and underbody. And in 051, that one has been parked since September. It's been deemed undrivable or not worth repairing by the city garage. So those two are kind of, they need to go anyway. And in kind of in order to maintain the number of vehicles in our fleet, to kind of support operations, we'd like to purchase 3 vehicles to replace those two, plus another of the 2010 Ford Fusion.
How many are left? Let's say once these batch of 2010s are done,
Yeah. Let me look real quick.
specifically how many of the 2010s are left?
We have, if we replace these 3, there are 2 more left in our fleet. Any other questions about capital requests?
Maintenance wise, there haven't been any problems though with some of the others.
I do have a vehicle condition report that the garage put together for us, that I can kind of, I can share if you're interested. We do have, kind of in addition, we have the 2 other 2010s, those are, have regular maintenance and issues that come up. And then after that, the next kind of batch of vehicles that were purchased were, there was one in 2012 that was purchased, one vehicle, one in 2013, and then the next newest one is 2016. So kind of that gap getting to the vehicles that were purchased in 2016, the ones that are 2016 and newer, we don't have as many problems with, don't have as much maintenance costs, etc. But the ones that are kind of that 2013 and older are the ones that are, cause more trips to the shop and that kind of thing.
Do we have a schedule of the of all of that, I guess? Okay, and the mileage and that type of thing,
Yep.
that might be helpful.
And part of our spring audit, we submit that information to finance, so they have the one that we submitted in spring, and I always get another one ready for budget, so the vehicle condition report that I mentioned, has the current mileage for all 20 of our vehicles in the fleet, and then kind of the mechanics summary
Yeah.
of the condition that they're currently in.
Yeah, because sometimes mileage isn't enough. Yeah.
That's what I was about to say, some of their vehicles don't necessarily get a lot of miles because they make short trips, but they have other issues.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the Pick a Batter Snack program, they're in the Waterloo School District, so they're not going far, but they're using them every day. But they're just going, a couple miles, so it's kind of,
Still dependable.
right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
So this is just in summary of our FY '26 budget. So we're submitting a proposed budget in the amount of $6,568,757. That's a 4.89 increase from our 25 amended budget. The budget will be funded by $2,513,796 in revenue, resulting in a total property tax asking of $4,054,961, which is a 5.35 increase compared to our FY '25 approved budget. Are there any other questions for me?
Right now.
Okay.
I mean, we'll be-
Question on the overdose data to action, are those dollars, they require a staff person?
They do. They actually require, and Ty, maybe you have to help me answer, they actually require a total number of FTEs per subcategory that we're required to work on. So for example, the peer recovery coach that we subcontract with Pathways, they require 1.0 FTE to work on that, and so that's kind of what those funds are for. And then the other activities that, Chandani, our program coordinator, is working on, she has delineated how much, of her FTE is to work on different activities. It's pretty prescribed.
Yep.
Yeah. Is there anything you wanna add to that?
No, I think that covers it.
So the on paper, one employee increase is natural given additional dollars, and that number, that 59.8, you said comes down to, that comes down
It's kind of 59.3.
3.
I use 59.3 as an average for the
Yeah.
year, but yes, it'll be down to
Once there's a-
58.8 after January 1st of
Yeah.
26.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hey, Michelle, or anybody listening, it's Justin.
Good morning.
Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, hey, question in reference to vehicle purchases. Would leasing be an option? Or is that something we'd want to steer away from?
Leasing can be an option. I would look at it very carefully because generally leasing is debt. You're borrowing money, and so part of that price you're paying is an interest factor. I've looked at it before. I think it kind of depends on the usage. I think if we were doing short-term things and we didn't need long-term a vehicle, that might be more helpful to us at the end of the day.
We.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah, we have not looked in terms of the feasibility of leasing. I think it's come up, but we haven't looked to see what the cost savings would be or, how we would do that.
Right. You could either pay for it out of operating budget, but again, you are paying generally an interest factor in there. And I know we've seen it done before where if you start leasing, if that becomes less attractive than owning, it's difficult. And Caitlin actually kind of spoke to this with copiers. If you want to get back into owning, that's a very expensive initial payment. So there's a lot of factors to consider and whether you would choose to do that.
Any other questions?
Thank you. All right.
Did you want to bring up
I think,
yours?
I don't think we need to unless you want to see the
Did you want to see
other
the line by line?
worksheets larger, but I think you've probably seen them already.
We highlighted everything that was the
Okay.
increases. That's good, thank you.
All right.
Actually, I think Caitlin and I were gonna try it just to see if it works.
Oh,
Because we're experimenting with something today. I almost forgot, I'm sorry.
Are you ready for me to share?
Well, sharing.
Actually, yeah, you,
Oh,
you get to stop sharing and I have to figure out how to start
I didn't get to
sharing.
choose, did I?
You already are.
You already are.
sharing.
All right, we're already here. So that was really painfully easy. We just, one of the struggles that you might have noticed departments had before that we're presenting is they are not able to see what you and I see. So we were trying to find a way for them to also be able to see it, and we may have done that. And both Kathy and Caitlin found a way not to have that be an issue today, but it has been an issue for others, so I think we've got that corrected now.
Exciting.
Thank you.
And thank you to IT for scrambling around and doing that at the last second. That was our experiment today.
Do we have anything else, or I entertain a motion to adjourn?
And Tuesday, repeat again, what are we planning on Tuesdays? Just for the-
Coming up Tuesday is building maintenance, at least their operations. The attorney hopefully isn't in court.
Right.
Hopefully we will have the treasurer. That may be it, but we'll have
Okay, you said and I forgot already, so
planning for those things at least.
thanks.
Linda, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
Aye.
You could.